think I have pirate stuff, actually. Welcome back to Every Disney Movie Ever. My name is Jess and I'm watching Every Disney Movie Ever. Today I'm going to talk about Treasure Planet. Treasure Planet is a 2002 animated theatrical release. It's directed by Clements and John Musker. The cinematography is by Rasoul Azadani. Supervising animators include Jared Beckstrand, Nancy Beiman, Ken Duncan, Adam Dykstra, Brian Ferguson, T. Daniel Hofstedt, Glen, Keane, Sergio, Pablos, John Pomeroy, John Ripa, Michael Show, Marc Smith, Oskar, Urretabizkaia, and Ellen Woodbury. There's 14 of them, so I wasn't gonna fully memorize. That's a lot. Editing was done by Michael Kelly. Music is by James Newton Howard, and it's written by John Musker, Ron Clements, and Rob Edwards. The film is based off the book Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson, and I've actually already done a book comparison for this book in Muppet Treasure Island. So if you want to see what the actual original little summary I did is, you can go watch the Muppet Treasure Island video. You can definitely see where it's inspired by the book, but obviously completely different circumstances, seeing as we're in space and it's a planet, not an island. And I think it definitely pumps the father-son bond between Silver and Hawkins a lot more. Also, Hawkins is a lot older in this than he is in the book and the original Disney movie that they did of this, so some differences for sure. The film stars Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Jim Hawkins, Brian Murray as Captain John Silver, David Hyde Pierce as Dr. Doppler, Emma Thompson as Captain Amelia, Dane A. Davis as Morph, Martin Short as Ben, and Laurie Metcalf as Sarah Hawkins. Treasure Planet was pitched at the famous 1985 Gong Show and was rejected a lot. It was rejected by Eisner, it was rejected by Jeffrey Katzenberg, and then I think it was rejected again, and then John Musker and Ron Clements, because this was like their baby, took it to Roy E. Disney, and Roy E. Disney loved it and took it to Eisner, and Eisner approved of it and said they could start work on it after Hercules finished. They wanted space to be much more warm and welcoming than space is usually depicted. They found they had some trouble modernizing the story and updating it to be in space. And they also combined Squire Trelawney and Dr. Livesey into Dr. Doppler. And obviously they put way more emphasis on the father-son relationship between Silver and Hawkins. Dr. Doppler was written with David Hyde Pierce in mind, as was Captain Amelia written in mind with Emma Thompson, but Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Brian Murray were cast after months and months of auditions. Joseph Gordon-Levitt found it kind of difficult to work in the booth alone, so he requested to work in a booth with Brian so they could really find that connection. And then the team kind of operated on a 70-30 law, where 70% of the film was going to be traditional animation and 30% of it would be CGI, and they were determined to make the CGI look completely seamless with the traditional animation. So in order to test this, they gave Captain Hook from Peter Pan a cyborg arm that was completely CGI to see if it would match up and look synchronous. And I would say I had no idea the CGI arm of Captain Silver was CGI. I thought that was part of the traditional animation, because there's big scoping shots and stuff that feel very CGI, the background, some of the backgrounds feel very CGI, some of the boat movements feel very CGI, but the arm part of Silver I always thought was traditionally animated, and kind of got super excited when I found out it wasn't. But they operated on that law, and personally I think that paid off for them. They also built the sets, the 3D CGI sets in full, so that he could then decide how they wanted the camera to move around in that space, just like they would in a live action film. The film had a $140 million budget and made $110 million in the box office. It's got a 69% Rotten Tomatoes, and a lot of critics were upset that they aged Jim up into a teenager, because they thought a lot of the charm of the original Treasure Island novel was that Jim Hawkins is a literal boy, a literal boy standing up to all these pirates, and that's part of the charm. Other people said the characters kind of lacked compared to normal Disney characters, but it was visually stunning. It was nominated for Best Animated Feature, but it lost to Spirited Away, rightfully so. Spirited Away is a masterpiece. It was supposed to have a sequel, with Willem Dafoe as the villain, which would have been so good. But that was canceled when it performed poorly, which is a tragedy. I'm very sad about it. And then it also was supposed to, Submarine Voyage, a ride in Disney World, was supposed to have an Atlantis, overhaul, but then Atlantis did bad, so they said, okay, it'll have a Treasure Planet overhaul, and then Treasure Planet did bad, according to them. So then, obviously, that became a Finding Nemo ride. Treasure Planet does have, some random little obscure video games and stuff it appears in. I am eternally grateful and glad that John Musker and Ron Clements fought for this movie, because I love this movie. I think this movie is really, really good. I've always loved it. And as I got older and I found out that it performed badly and people didn't like it as much, I was devastated. And I'm really proud of John Musker and Ron Clements fighting for their baby and seeing it through, because I think they did an excellent job. I think this movie's really good. I think the animation is what stands out in this movie the most, because it is stunning. I think they did a fantastic job blending computer-generated animation with traditional, unlike things like Sinbad and the Seven Seas, which it was very... This, I think there are a couple scenes where you can kind of tell what's super CGI-y and what is not. But otherwise, it's seamless. The cyborg arm, I had no idea that was CGI. Thought that was traditionally animated along with Silver. I think when I was younger, I had a big fat crush on Jim, so nicely done. I also think his pants and boots are very Dragon Ball Z inspired, personally. Captain Amelia is also stunning. Dr. Doppler and the way he's animated reminds me very much of Edgar from the Aristocats. So take that with what you will. And then obviously the lighting and background animation and all of that in general is so breathtaking. And I think the cinematographer who probably, which granted it's an animated movie, so people are like, oh, cinematographer on an animated movie, they probably helped with lighting and what it would look like if they lit the scene a certain way and stuff like that, and it just made it so superior. There are so many moments in this movie where the lighting is just so good. The biggest edit thing I think I have to talk about is the montage, where we kind of see, Jim's dad leaving him, while it's also, juxtaposed against Jim bonding with Silver, and the biggest one being the comparison of, Jim reaching out for his dad, and it's, devastated he can't go with, and then you cut, and you see, Jim's thinking he's being left, in a small moment, obviously, by Silver, but then Silver, flows back and is like, come on, aren't you coming? And it's, a huge, oh my god, he's doing stuff his dad didn't do, and, that edit is so well done. They cut to the right stuff at the right time to really feel, it speeds up the bonding between Silver and Jim exponentially. They would have had to spend a lot of movie doing that if they didn't figure out the right way to do it, juxtaposed against his dad leaving in that montage with that song. Ugh! Obviously, we have those non-diegetic songs that are, in the montage and then at the end, which are very, heart-shattering and really good. But the actual score, James Newton Howard, oh my gosh, I feel like he really, really captured, the space mixed with pirate fantasy feel. It's so epic, it's so memorable, it's so appropriate. I really, really love the score of this film. Some of the build-up in the orchestra is just so good. I could pick this out of a lineup. There are quite a few things in this movie that are small, but I think are so perfect in the writing. When Jim comes home with the cops and is in trouble, and she's like, it won't happen again, and he's on probation and whatever. And while she's lecturing him, she hasn't even said, help me, you're punished. I mean, she said he's punished, but she hasn't said anything. She's, still berating him, and he picks up a tub and starts, bussing tables, basically. He starts picking up stuff. Him doing that without any, I have never taken that as, oh, he's in trouble, he feels he better help. I have always taken it as, even with his mom yelling at him, and he knows, he's making bad choices through his pain, he still, helps her do her job when he's home. And I think that's such a little nugget of, a perfect little intro into, yeah, Jim just did something bad and is, a bad, kid, but he's not a bad kid. Look at him help his mom. He's just making bad choices because he's in pain. And that tiny little nugget, I think, is just so essential and, like, so amazing. And then I think the setup at the beginning is also just, like, it builds. And you're like, ooh, like Billy Bones, like, giving him the map. Like, it's just so, it's set up so well. And they also set up, like, oh, Jim is, like, a mess up. Like, he's, you know, gonna not do the right thing. So then, like, when something happens to Mr. Arrow, it makes it that much more like, oh my god, he thought he could do everything right, and then he, like, messed up, and it just reinforces that, and it's easier for people to believe that he messed up. And then there's lines that are, like, Captain Amelia has some of the best lines in this movie. Zip your howling screamer makes me laugh every time. And then I'm gonna make this as monosyllabic as possible also is so funny. I can't deal with her. And then I'm so happy, I know it's in the book, but I'm so happy they kept the barrel scene in the movie where Jim is in the barrel and overhears the conversation, and basically, like, that's when the reality of, like, Jim is, you know, John Silver is bad, because that's the scene I remember most from the live action Treasure Island that Disney did all the way back 50s? Whenever that was, with baby Billy Driscoll hiding in that barrel, and the lighting was so profound. I've never forgotten that scene. I remember it to this day. And that was, like, you know, 4+ years ago at this point. So for them to keep the barrel scene in where he's hiding in there and it's close and the lighting is also so good, I love it. It means so much to me. And then obviously the meat of this is the father-son story between John and Jim, and it is complicated, and that's what's so beautiful about it. The fact that, like, they bond, but then Jim feels such a betrayal, but then John is like, but actually I do care about you, but, like, that's been, like, kind of scorned or whatever, but then at the end he chooses to save Jim over saving his treasure. So then Jim is like, no, you do love me, and we do have kind of a father-son moment here going on, so I'm gonna let you get away, and, like, ugh. And then when John lets him keep Morph, I sob every time. I don't have a lot to say about the acting. I just have to say every person is at, like, peak prime performance. The fact that, like, Martin Short can just, like, capture chaos incarnate, and just, like, the way he just has, like, a character voice. He doesn't even have to be, like, a character actor. Just his voice can be a character. And then Joseph's performance, Brian's performance, Emma's performance, David Hyde Pierce's performance, like, all of their performances are just so sublime. As you've gathered, I'm sure, I love this movie. It's one of my favorites. It means so much to me. I watch it kind of often. Not as much as the live action Cinderella, but I do love this movie so much. A funny joke that I just didn't find another place through in the technical stuff that, like, makes me laugh every time is the fact that flatula is a language. And Dr. Doppler speaks it back to the, I think his name is Snuff, or something like that. Makes me so funny. Farts are funny, people. Farts are funny. And then the scene that, like, a scene that normally gets me, like, really good is when John Silver knows that the Spider Psycho is the one that killed Arrow, and it wasn't Jim. Ooh, that gets me good. That gets me good. And then obviously, when Silver chooses to save Jim over his treasure, that gets me. But the scene that always makes me cry, which I did cry, is, like, I've worked up the emotion. I've gotten teary a couple times. So then when he finally, like, says, Morph, I've got a job for you, and Morph, like, does this little, and, like, oh my god, I sob. And then, like, Silver throws up the gems and is like, to fix your mother's inn, because he broke it, burned it to the ground, you could say. Every time, cry, every time. So good. I definitely would highly recommend. I love this movie very much. That's everything I have for Treasure Planet. Highly recommend. If you haven't seen this movie because you've heard it's, like, one of the bad Disney ones, no. Go watch it. It's really good. I love this movie. My final rating is 9 treasure maps out of 10. Our total movie count is... Our cry count is... Parent death toll is still the same. If you want to keep up with the Movie Watching When, follow me on Instagram or Twitter. You'll find out Movie Watching When. I put out videos every Monday and Friday and sometimes Wednesday. Join Patreon. Got a tier starting at just $1 where you get every video a week early. And then the tiers go 5, 10, 20, 40. Go check it out. Lots of fun bonus stuff going on over there. Buy merch. Merch is awesome. I really like my merch. You should really check it out and buy it because it's kind of cool and comfy and I like it. Until next time, comment, like, subscribe, but I'm not in charge of your life. You are, so you, and don't be spider psycho about it. Stuff I actually have. I actually have pirate things. Look, I have a hook. It's not a cyborg arm, but it'll do. And I have a sword. Shing, shing, ding, ding.